Hello there, everybody. So my name is James, and I'm going to be covering today Tone 1 Resurrectional for Galician Chant. You'll probably need to look at my first intro video because I explain what these little ticks and parentheses and all these other things are and mean, because I'm going to be using a certain template to guide you through each of the tones. And just to outline my plan here, my idea is to go through a tone a week, right? And this week I'm going to try to do 2, because next week is tone 2. So today I'm going to do tone 1, and maybe later in the week I'll end up doing tone 2. But maybe I can do a full series, so that'll be 24 weeks worth of this. We'll see what actually happens, and then I'll have to do a few extra for Kontakia. But anyway, the point is, I'm just going to sing through a few of these to let you see what it sounds like, where emphasis notes are, what it is you're doing when you're singing Tone 1 Resurrectional, and so on. And people have asked me about resurrectional tones. It seems that people stumble on these more than the Vespers tones. And there's a good reason for that. It's because resurrectional tones are brutal. If you actually look at the musical structure of most of the resurrectional tones, they are not kind in their structure, and that actually throws a lot of people for a loop. It's not because any of you don't know how to sing or don't know the notes, but there's actually unintuitive things in here that are happening, and then I want to point them out to you so you can see it and then know to deal with it. Before I get into that, though, I just want to put a disclaimer here. There is no one correct way of singing the tones. I will be teaching one way of singing the tones. I'm only going to be doing one, but I take it as a given that there are many different ways of doing this. Like, for example, tone 8 for Vespers, I'm used, probably most of people who might be listening to this would be used to an A-B format for tone 8, but when I was in Ukraine, there was an A-B-C format for tone 8. The A and B were the same, and then there was a third one, and that's just fine. These things evolve over time. The correct word is evolution. Like in evolution, what makes genetics change is random mutations at the very tiny level, and they're no big deal. The things that survive move on, and after lots of mutations, it creates something different after a long period of time. A lot of these tones, and I mentioned this sort of in the introduction, but I can expand on it very quickly here, is that have a common root, but depending on the culture they're in, we've had them expand into, we have Kievan chant, Valam chant, Znameni chant, Galician chant, and so on. If you actually compare some of these side by side, you can tell they're very similar, but there's been, if you will, a mutation that's gone on, and some of this is simply because, one scribe's copied it wrong, or Cantor remembered it wrong, or somebody thought, this doesn't sound quite right, I think I should add a note here, and whatever. And you might think that sounds dishonest, but I think, no, this is actually perfectly acceptable. Oh, there's a crying baby. Okay, the crying baby is being looked after. Anyway, you might think that it is dishonest for someone to do a little tinkering like that, but no, it's not. That's how culture and music evolves over time. That's normal. What's not normal is trying to create a single unified tone or singing system or translation across a whole country, a whole church, the whole world, or whatever. That's not unlike, I guess, the idea of eugenics, really. And yes, I did say that purge everything else that's slightly different from the common thing. You can do it, but I don't think you'll like the results of eugenics, and quite frankly, you won't like the results of purging every single deviant form of of a musical theme that appears anywhere in the church or elsewhere. No, it's actually little deviations that create all the different cultures and traditions and musics that we have, and either people's creative spirit or lack of remembering things properly. I don't care. So yes, I did just compare let's say having a unified singing thing to eugenics, and I'm not taking that back, because really it is that repulsive as far as I'm concerned to try and control everything down to the smallest quarter note. So just don't do that. Anyway, so that said, like, this is a product of a lot of time, and because of that, some things are better in other tone systems, but because of that, there are certain forms of messiness here. And as we said in the previous video, we have translations that were originally from Greek or Ukrainian or whatever that have come into English and that don't match the music quite exactly. So getting into this, we have once again our resurrectional tone. This is what we usually end up singing. So we have parenthetical notes here and there and everywhere. And this is what you would want it to look like here, the constructor one, if you were writing English to match tone 1 resurrectional exactly. And it's still not even quite correct, because right here there should be an emphasis note that I haven't included intentionally, because most English words do not have an emphasis on the last syllable if it's a multiple syllable word. So it's actually difficult to deal with this, but I'll tell you what this all means. I'll run through a few things. So here are some common troparia that we sing. And just a reminder, when do we use resurrectional tones? There's 3 times mainly that we would use them. The first is during the Divine Liturgy, during the troparia. Just a little insert here. Many, I guess hundreds of years ago, the troparia weren't in the liturgy at all. They were a Vespers thing only. And so that's an insert. So anyone who doesn't want to do troparia during liturgy, hey, that's fine as far as I'm concerned, because that's a new thing from historical perspective. But troparia, we sing them at the end of Vespers, after the Apostoca, after the Song of Simeon. And this is sort of like your victory hymn for the saint or for a particular feast or whatever. This is your rah-rah. That's what a troparia is. The other place we sing resurrectional tones, not troparia, but resurrectional tones rather, is during Matins for the troparia and for all the for common people. If you're doing this for the stases in between sets of psalms, there's often set hymns to those, but you can also do the resurrectional tone there. And that would be the main 3 spots, like during liturgy, near the end of Vespers for the troparia, and for various things in Matins. And this is where these tones go. So I'm going to sing the exaltation one, so you can just here's what it sounds like in the Galician chant, and you can follow along with the notes, and then I'll make some comments on what's going on. Save your people, O Lord, and bless your inheritance. Grant victory to your faithful people against enemies, and protect your community by your cross. We hear that probably often enough. So a few notes. First of all, I've always said, let's read it through and see what it is that we're singing. What does it sound like? Save your people, O Lord, and bless your inheritance. Grant victory to your faithful people against enemies, and protect your community by your cross. For the sake of these videos, I simply don't care what the words implicate. I just care where the emphases in the sentence are. That is all these videos are concerned about. So, save your people, O Lord, and bless your inheritance. So we have an emphasis at P on P as in PEO, and an emphasis on bless, but not an emphasis on O Lord. So this is interesting because when you look at the notes, we have save your people, O Lord, and going on. So it's as though we were singing, save your people, O Lord, and bless your inheritance. That's not how we naturally read it, but it is how we put it to notation, because that's where the words are. If you so here we got on this first half note here, save your P, we got an emphasis note there. Pull, O Lord, there's an emphasis note there at the very beginning of the stretchy note. O Lord, and bless your inheritance. So we come down at inheritance on the emphasis right before the end of the phrase, which ends with the star. And this is in the anthology if you want to follow along with it. The point is, if you wanted to emphasize this not weirdly, one way you could do it is just delete, O Lord, save your people and bless your inheritance. Now we got all our emphases in the right place. Now, obviously, you're not going to go and do this by changing this everywhere. I want you to be aware that when you're singing tone 1, one reason you might trip up is because there's these words that demand to be sung but have emphases in the wrong spot. And this is only the beginning. We're going to look through all of these and what's wrong with them. And if you wanted to emphasize this correctly without emphasizing O Lord, what would you even do? I'm not even sure. Save your people, save your people, O Lord, and save your people, O Lord, and bless your inheritance. You'd have to put a massive lopside on the word save in order to nail that correctly, and it's not going to happen. Grant Vic. So right here, victory. We got an emphasis here. It goes on this high white note. Grant victory to your faithful people against enemies. So right here, N goes with this white note with the emphasis on it. That's our grant victory to your faithful people against enemies. That's where we're putting our emphasis. And we're skipping one of these parenthetical notes, but we are using the other one. So these are notes that sometimes are there and sometimes are not. And now, here's an important point. This tripadia isn't long enough to demonstrate this, but the other ones will be. Because tone 1 resurrectional has 4 parts to it. The first is the beginning part. So you see that begin and 1 are not exactly the same. Da, 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 da. This is only sung once for the very first phrase, and you never sing it again. Then you have 2. This is our end phrase. Da, 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 da. Typically would end a sentence, but none of our books are written like that, so forget about it. The important point here is that 2 and 1 will repeat back and forth, but you can only properly end this tone after using phrase 2. And I'll explain why. Let's add a star here, and I'll show you what happens if I try to end this using this number of stars. Save your people, O Lord, and bless your inheritance. Grant victory to your faithful people against enemies, and protect your community by your cross. As you see, I had to think about it. I wasn't even sure what note to go to because it's actually a weird jump. This last note at the end of phrase 2 is the same note, and that you continue to naturally end the phrase, to end the thing. But here you need to do a third jump down, so here, when you go from 1 to 2, you stick on the same note. As you can see, this right here is a B, and at the start of 2, it's a B. 2 brings you down to a G right here, and you start 1 with a G. So you're always continuing on the same note. Only if you end with phrase 1, you need to do this awkward jump from here to here. and that's not natural, and so it's actually hard to sing. It sounds sloppy as well. So the point is that if this was actually constructed this way, here's what you would want to do. You actually need to either delete one of the stars in your head as you're singing it, as soon as you realize what's happening, or add one somewhere. So I'm going to try this out and show you what happens. Save your people, O Lord, and bless your inheritance. Grant victory to your faithful people against enemies, and protect your community by your cross. So that worked. I actually ended up skipping this note, community by your cross. So basically I pretended as if there was a star here in order to end this properly. The Tone 1's Resurrectional's end phrase is really strict about that, or you will kind of trip over yourself. In the anthology, I don't think there's a single instance where this actually happens, but if you use, I don't think it happens in it might happen once in the Vespers book, but if you use like other various books that were either written for other tones or were written when these tones were sung even differently than they are now, you might have, because we're looking for an even number of stars in our split, so you might have an odd number of stars of sentence phrase splits in your tripodion, and if you do, you need to be aware of this rule to keep it together, basically. So that you need to have an extra phrase if there is an odd number of stars in your tripodion. That's the main thing that's going on there. So I'll move on to the Dormition one, and sing that one through, because that's another major tripodion that we see in throughout the liturgical year. This is on, page 883 in the anthology, if you want to follow along. So now I would actually recommend not following along first. Don't turn your page there. I'm going to just give a 5-second hiatus here. You pause the video, sing through this, and if you have a friend next to you who can look in the anthology, have your friend hear what you're singing and compare it to the notes in the anthology to see if you actually do the same thing that's in the anthology or not. The point of that simply is to see whether this is a natural way to sing things. Hint, hint, it's not. This is, but this is not. But I'll just pause it for a second. Give 5 seconds here for you to pause it and try that out. All right, so here's what I'm going to sing. And maybe a lot of you have actually already sung this and know by heart, so this test isn't even going to work. But I'll sing it through. In giving birth you retained your virginity. In falling asleep you did not abandon the world, O Mother of God. You passed into life, for you are the Mother of life. And by your prayers you deliver our souls from death. Now, this could have just as easily been sung as follows. In giving birth you retained your virginity. In falling asleep you did not abandon the world, O Mother of God. You passed into life, for you are the Mother of life. And by your prayers you deliver our souls from death. Now, the very last one was I was being extreme, but here, in falling asleep, in falling asleep, so in falling asleep, very choppy, but if you were to read this just with the stars like this, without an anthology, and it was the first time you saw it, what would prevent anyone from singing In giving birth, you retained your virginity. In falling asleep, you did not abandon the world, O Mother of God. There's nothing that would prevent someone from doing that. But, of course, talk it through. In giving birth, you retained your virginity. In falling asleep, you did not abandon the world, O Mother of God. So the emphasis in the anthology is correct. But there's so many black notes in front. As I said in the last video, I like to maximize it to 2, because after that it becomes so choppy and nasty that you just want to emphasize it somewhere else for the music to sound good. Just as well. In falling asleep, you did not abandon the world. You did not abandon the world, O Mother of God. So, really, an emphasis is here. So when we in falling asleep, you did not abandon the world, O Mother of God. Why I did the second version, O Mother of God, is that someone could interpret it either way. In falling asleep, you did not abandon the world, O Mother of God. We don't say you did not abandon the world, O Mother of God. We also don't say you did not abandon the world, O Mother of God. Well, actually, you can say that. But you don't say, O Mother of God. Nobody says that. That's not how you say the phrase. And so the anthology does not emphasize this correctly. Again, I'm not saying don't sing what's in the anthology when you're using the anthology. I am saying if you're looking at a system like this and you're actually talking things through, where you put the notes for the words is going to matter, because you're going to want to sound it out. And so if you sound it out and it says, you did not abandon the world, O Mother of God, the last place you would put your emphasis is there. So we're looking at phrase 2 here. In falling asleep, you did not abandon the world, O Mother of God. Like that. Or, you did not abandon the world, O Mother of God. That's way too choppy nasty. But there's many, many ways that this can go. O Mother of God is one of the options, even though the emphasis is wrong. I talked about this in the last video with, what was it? Spirit of the Lord, I believe is the phrase I used. Spirit of the Lord, or Spirit of the Lord, or Spirit of the Lord. These are all interpretations of music that is mismatched to the words. So when you're looking at something, you want to know, as the leader, what you're doing, what those who are following you are going to be doing. And if you're not the leader, you want to know what you are intending to do and what the leader might be doing, so you all don't completely fall apart if you're reading something like this without notes in front of you. This one is particularly interesting for Basil, and that's January 1st. You can find the anthology, but I'll sing it through and make a couple notes here. You are seated on high on a fiery throne, with your Father who is without beginning, and your divine Spirit. Yet you willed, O Jesus, to be born of a virgin maiden, your mother. I'll stop there. I'm just reading through the anthology, so you can see the use of the parenthetical notes here. The word yet. This is phrase 1, so this is beginning here, phrase 2 as above, and now this is phrase 1. So here, the word yet, as you can see here, we got 2 parenthetical notes. Those have been omitted for the word yet. Yet you willed, O Jesus, to be born of a virgin maiden, your mother. So here, we got another parenthetical note. You willed, so we're skipping straight from this G to this B. How on earth would anyone know to do that if it wasn't written down as the notes? It could just as easily be this. Yet you willed, O Jesus, to be born a virgin, and so on. Like, you could just connect these on the word you willed. It sounds draggy, which is why But that's the thing. Some people will want to sing this together, and some people will just skip over it, and that's probably my inclination when I do this. Point is, you need to know whether you want to have this parenthetical note for a thing like this or not. I'm actually going to go find Basil in the anthology now. I got it in front of me here because I'm flipping between pages and I didn't mark them, silly me. Come on, where's the end of December? There it is. So, you are seated on high on a fiery throne. That could be just as easily, you're seated on high on a fiery throne. You are seated on high on a fiery throne. Perfectly legitimate interpretation. Which one do you use? You need to know what you're singing, where your emphasis is, before you start. Or you could trip over each other. If you have notes in front of you, you're fine. But anyway. With your Father who is without beginning and your divine Spirit, yet you willed, O Jesus, to be born of a virgin maiden, your mother. And as man you were circumcised on the 8th day. Glory to your all-gracious will. That's interesting. So again, we're skipping these two frontal notes. Glory to. So we're going glory, skipping this one, and going here. Glory to your all gracious will. That's what the phraseology is saying. Glory to your all gracious will. That's how I would have done it. Again, point is, probably people will interpret this differently. Glory to your providence, glory to your condescension, all you who alone love mankind. So this is where kind of the constructor comes in. So the way I've set it up is like there's no parenthetical notes. Da 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 da. Well, okay, there is, because this can be pretty flow. Da 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 da. And I'm importantly emphasizing this tie right here because ideally, when you're doing phrase 1, da da, where would that be? The voice of the Father bore witness to you. This is one instance where you do want to tie the notes together. Because as previously mentioned, when you got a long note after a short note, that note, it becomes an emphasis. And then when the note goes up, it becomes an emphasis. So these two notes become an emphasis together. This is why here, at this end phrase, technically these should be two tied together as well. But you end up with a situation where it's always lopsided. So everything you do in phrase 1 will always sound wrong at the end. That's how the notation is set up. There's nothing I can do about. Well, there is. I can just change the tone, but that'll confuse everyone. But like I was talking about scribes doing things, this is the sort of thing a scribe would probably change because it's not suited for English at all. Anyway, so theophany, what I did is I took this setup and I actually just transcribed this tropodion right here so we can take a look at where various things are going. And so we've seen these parenthetical notes used in some of the other ones, but here, when you, O Lord, so right here this is tied together. When you, O Lord, were baptized in the Jordan. These two are skipped. These two are skipped as well. Worship of the Trinity was revealed. The voice of the Father bore witness to you, naming you the beloved Son, and the Spirit in the form of a dove conferred the word certainty. Glory to you, O Christ God, who appeared and enlightened the world. Just to follow along, you can see right here, In this decadent, these parenthetical notes, once this time it's not being used. Here, one of them is being used. Here, two of them are being used. I can't think of a time when you'd use three. Here, we got one parenthetical note used. Here, we got both. This can stretch and flex to accommodate anything, of course. It's always a matter of where do you, when you're reading a new text you've never seen before, want to put your emphases. So I came up with two practice ones. This is a good example of constructor in use, I think, and this one is not. So here I'm going to give a 5-second hiatus again, pause it, try singing this first one, and then I'll unpause and I'll sing it, and we'll see if we got the same thing more or less. Okay, so I'm going to sing it here and see if even when I wrote it, I was actually following the rules or not. Take a look at this excellent example. It will show you how to sing tone one resurrectional. All the words are in just the right places, so you see that it isn't that difficult. And of course we must end after the second phraseology. I didn't use phrase because that would actually be counterproductive to my point. Phraseology makes the emphasis good. But take a look at this excellent example. So you could say take a look. I don't think anyone would say that, but take a look at this excellent example. Take a look at this excellent example. It will show you how to sing tone resurrectional. It will show you how to sing tone resurrectional. All the words. Now here, I actually might not have used that. You could say all the words, but I don't think anyone said it. All the words are in just the right places. All the words are in just the right places. Noticed here, this is the note where in the basal one we talked about above, that this all the words are just the right places. If this is the word that the note that disappears sometimes, take note that it tends to be, when it's functional, either one of the syllables in a multi-syllable word that is not the emphasis syllable, or tends to be like a preposition or something. Like it's a small, and it's being a small word that gets into the word that matters. So you see that it isn't that difficult. And of course we must enter after the second phraseology. So I think this captures what one of these would look like. Now compare that to this. Sing it. I'll give it 5 seconds again. Try this and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to sing this. Okay. And now we see something that isn't so good for a spiritual walk. Wow, this is just so awful to sing. I cannot believe what my vision has done. What do we do when everything doesn't match up to Christ our God? Or when there isn't enough phrases in the hymn? I practically guarantee that I did not sing the same thing you did. So here you could be and now, and now we see. The problem is and now we see. It's like a double emphasis. So do you do and now we see, or do you do and now? I don't have an answer. If you encounter a phrase like this in a book, you will just have to pick one and hope that everyone follows you together, which is why it's so important to know this. And so, and now we see something. So now we see something. So that ends up getting weird. But if I emphasize the other way, what do I do? And now we see something that isn't so good. So I set it up deliberately so that everything you do is wrong. Like, there is no way to sing this where the emphasis will be in the right place, or that the music won't be horribly awkward and unintuitive. This is, not every phrase is this bad in typical English books, but this is a good practice in showing you what it could look like and why you're tripping up. Again, this is not because you don't know the music. It's not because you can't read the music or you're unfamiliar with Vespers or anything like that. It's because the music and the English text are not matched to one another properly. That's not anyone's fault. When people first started translating English text, they just wanted to get any English text out there. They're not going to do the most poetic one ever. But it's not, if you make a mistake here, it's not because of your lack of ability. It's because to sing something like this particular Troparion, if you want to call it that, is really, really hard. Like, there's no correct way of doing it because it's a mess. And this one is supposed to be a mess, but this one is supposed to be so matched to the music that it just slips off your tongue and you can't screw it up. Like, maybe you can, but I don't think you can screw it up. Not without just looking at it for 2 seconds. But that gives you some sense of what is going on with Tone 1 Resurrectional. So here you got the full notation for everything. Here you have an example of where all kinds of parenthetical notes go, so you can visualize the theophany. Hang on, and I'll even tell you what page that's on in the anthology, just so you can take a look at it yourself. That is page, where is it? 789 in the anthology for worship from Sheptytsky Institute. So you can visualize how this tone is flexing and fluxing and doing all kinds of different things. And you know now to add an extra phrase like here, if you need one when you encounter a Tone 1 phrase that is missing the right amount of phrases. That's all I can mention about Tone 1 Resurrectional. Really, I will attach this document, plus I'll attach the constructor and the single and this document here, all separate documents, to a mega file that'll be linked in the description, so you can take a look at all of them. Let me know in the comments how this helps you, what you would like to be hearing, if this helps you, how I could present differently. This is an early presentation, so I'm trying to get my bearings myself on how I want to do this. Or if you just need more examples or different examples, whatever, like, let me know what you need. But barring actual feedback, I'm just going to keep on going like this for each tone to let you see the skeleton and the structure of each tone and how it works and what the exceptions are, and give you an actual good example of what it should look like, so you know that it is possible, if nothing else. Thank you for listening. Happy singing, everyone. God bless. Bye-bye.